Welcome to the Digital Advantage podcast. We are your go-to library if you want to hear about the latest for business and personal digital resources. Today, we're diving deep, and we're really excited about this one. It's a blog post called Affordable Cybersecurity Solutions to Protect Your Small Business.
I think it's a really, really important deep dive for everyone out there, especially when you consider, the landscape of cyber threats right now. Uh, People often think of cyber criminals as always going after these massive corporations, but this post really does a good job of shining a light on something else that's happening.
Yeah, it really does. You might think that having really good cybersecurity is something that's only possible for these huge companies with giant budgets, but this blog post really, I think, convincingly argues that that's not true, and that's especially important for your small business.
Yeah, and I mean, the post really starts out strong. I mean, right out of the gate, they hit you with this really surprising statistic. Did you know that nearly half of all cyber attacks actually target small businesses?
That is a huge number. It's kind of mind-blowing, really.
It is, and it actually makes a lot of sense when you think about it, from the perspective of a cyber criminal. If you're a hacker, oftentimes smaller businesses, they have fewer layers of security in place. Maybe they don't have a dedicated IT team constantly monitoring things or, using the latest, most sophisticated software. I mean, unfortunately, it can make them look like easier targets.
That's right. Hackers often see smaller operations as, more vulnerable, because they might have fewer defenses and less specialized tech support. So, in this deep dive, we're going to talk about why these traditional cybersecurity solutions, the ones that are often really expensive, aren't always the best fit. And maybe even more importantly, we're going to talk about those smart, affordable, easy to use strategies that you can start implementing, like today, to protect your business. Basically, we want to cut through all that confusing technical language and give you practical, budget friendly ways to stay safe.
And one thing I really liked about this blog post is how it sets the stage. It really emphasizes this growing threat. And it directly challenges that whole idea that, it's only big businesses that need to worry about these cyber attacks. But as we already mentioned, often cyber criminals, they're looking for the easiest way in. And sadly, that can often be targeting small businesses.
So let's get a little more specific here. The blog post highlights a few specific threats that I think are really important for everyone to understand. And the first one they dig into is phishing attacks. I'm sure everybody's probably gotten a suspicious email at some point, but these phishing attacks, they can be really, really clever. Can you talk about how these usually work and why they're such a big concern for small businesses?
Yeah, I think what makes phishing so dangerous is how they use like psychology and manipulation. These attacks are really designed to trick you. They want to fool you into giving away your information. And they do it by making the email look like it's from someone you trust, like maybe your bank or a supplier, even someone in your own company. The blog post even gives some specific examples, things like fake login pages that look almost exactly like the real deal. So you click a link in the email, you enter your username and password, and boom, suddenly your login info is in the hands of a cyber criminal.
Yeah, it's amazing how believable they can be sometimes. The post even mentions that even people who are generally careful online, they can still get tricked by these phishing scams. What makes them so effective, even against people who are, usually pretty cautious?
Well, a lot of times they're designed to create this sense of urgency, or they try to take advantage of your trust in someone. Like the email might say there's some immediate security problem with one of your accounts, and you need to act right now, before it's too late. So you're kind of pressured to act quickly without really stopping to think if it's legitimate. Or, like the blog post said, it might look like it's just a normal request from someone you know. So you're not really on guard because you recognize the name. And what's worse is sometimes these emails have attachments that contain malware. So just opening the email can put your entire system at risk.
That's scary. Okay, so the next big threat they discuss is ransomware attacks. And these just sound completely disruptive. Can you walk us through what actually happens during a ransomware attack and how it can impact a business's daily operations?
Oh yeah, ransomware is definitely a nightmare scenario for any business. What happens is these cyber criminals get access to your files and then they encrypt them. That basically means they scramble them up so you can't access them anymore. Then they demand a ransom, a payment, usually in cryptocurrency, to give you the key to unlock your files. And the blog post really drives home how bad this can be for your operations. Imagine not being able to access your customer records, or you can't process orders, or you can't manage your finances. It can bring your entire business to a screeching halt.
And the blog post mentions something really important that even if you pay the ransom, they might not actually give you your files back.
That's right. There's absolutely no guarantee. You could pay the ransom, and they might not give you a working decryption key, or they could demand even more money. Plus, paying the ransom kind of tells these criminals that you're an easy target, so it might make you more likely to be attacked again in the future. And the Post also notes that a lot of times these attackers, they go after systems with outdated software or weak security, because those are often easier to exploit.
So it's like you're rewarding them for bad behavior.
Kind of, yeah.
Okay, so the last specific threat they discuss is data breaches. This is where private information, like customer data or payment details, gets exposed. How do these breaches usually happen, and what are the long-term consequences for a small business?
Well, the blog post really stresses that a lot of data breaches, they start with what are called compromised credentials. Basically, that means someone's username and password have been stolen. And this often comes down to things like people reusing the same password for multiple accounts. So if one account gets hacked, all the others that use that same password are vulnerable too. And these credentials, they can be stolen through phishing attacks, like we talked about, or through malware that's secretly recording everything you type. Once they're in, these hackers can move around inside your systems, sometimes without anyone noticing for a while. And that's when they can steal sensitive data.
And the post really paints a clear picture of how bad the fallout from a data breach can be, not just financially in the short term, but for your reputation in the long term.
Exactly. In the short term, you might have legal fees, fines, and the cost of notifying all the people who are affected. But the damage to your reputation, that can be way worse and it can last for a really long time. If your customers lose trust in you because their information was compromised, it can be really tough to earn that back. And, in really bad cases, it can even lead to a business shutting down.
So it's really clear that these threats are serious business, but the post goes on to talk about how those traditional cybersecurity solutions, the ones that are really complex and expensive, the ones that big companies use, they're often not the right fit for smaller businesses. Why is that? What are the main reasons for this disconnect?
I think it's really interesting how different those big enterprise level solutions are from what a small business actually needs and can manage. The blog post explains that a lot of these systems were created for huge companies that have like entire teams of IT specialists whose whole job is to run and monitor these really complicated security setups. But for a small business owner, someone who might be handling sales and customer service and managing their technology all at the same time, these systems can be just way too much.
Yeah, I mean, you might not have the time to keep up with all of that or even understand what you're looking at. The post mentions things like sophisticated firewalls and intrusion detection alerts, and it all sounds really complicated.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of these really robust solutions, they need constant attention and expert analysis to really work well. If you don't have someone on your team who has that kind of specialized knowledge, then spending a lot of money on those fancy tools might not actually make you that much safer. And then, of course, there's the cost. These enterprise-grade solutions can be really expensive. They often have big monthly fees, software licenses, hardware upgrades, and that can be a real barrier for smaller businesses that are working with tighter budgets.
So these big budget solutions might not be the way to go for a lot of small businesses. But the good news is the blog post moves on to talk about some cybersecurity solutions that are much more accessible. And they start with user-friendly security software. What are the most important things to look for there?
The post really emphasizes starting with a strong foundation of security tools that are both effective and easy to use. And the first thing, the absolute must-have, is a good antivirus program. It's like your front line of defense, blocking malware, viruses, all that nasty stuff, before it can even get into your systems. And the post even suggests some really affordable options that are known for being user-friendly. They mention Avast, Bitdefender, and Malwarebytes. These are all great programs that won't slow your computer down and are easy to manage.
So having that basic protection is really step one for everyone. And then the post talks about how important password managers are. I think a lot of people, and I know I've done this too, we tend to reuse passwords for different accounts. Why is a password manager so essential?
It's such a common thing to do, but unfortunately, like the post points out, it's a huge security risk. I mean, think about it. If someone gets hold of one of your passwords and you're using it for multiple accounts, then they can get into all of them. Password managers like Bitwarden or LastPass, they solve this problem by storing all your login information in a safe, encrypted vault. And they can even create strong, unique passwords for each of your accounts. So you don't have to try to remember a ton of different complicated passwords. You just need one really strong master password to unlock everything.
Makes a lot of sense, yeah. It definitely takes the pressure off trying to keep all those passwords straight. Now, the next solution the post talks about is automated data backups. Why are these so crucial for a small business to have?
They're super important. The blog post talked about how losing data can be devastating for a business no matter how it happens. It could be a system crash, a ransomware attack that locks up all your files, even accidentally deleting something important. All of those can seriously disrupt your operations, and in some cases, they can even force a business to close. Having automated data backups is like having a safety net. If something goes wrong, you can recover your data and get back to business as usual much faster.
And there are some really affordable and easy to use options for doing that, like using cloud storage services.
Absolutely. Services like Google Drive, Dropbox, iDrive, they all have different plans, and many of them include automatic backups. That means your important files are being copied to secure servers somewhere else on a regular basis, so even if your computer crashes or something happens to your local files, you can get them back easily. A lot of these services also offer encryption, which adds an extra layer of security to your backups. And the post also suggests keeping local backups as well, like on an external hard drive or a NAS device. That way you have a backup, even if your internet goes down or you can't access the cloud.
I like that layered approach. Okay, the last essential solution they cover is multi-factor authentication and encryption. These sound a little more technical. Can you break them down for us and explain why they matter so much for small businesses?
Sure. Multi-factor authentication, which people often call MFA, is a really powerful way to make your accounts more secure. It basically adds another step beyond just your password. So even if someone steals your password, they still can't get into your account without that extra factor. It could be a code sent to your phone, a fingerprint scan, or a security key. It makes it a lot harder for someone to break in.
So it's like having a double lock on your front door.
Yeah, exactly. And then encryption, that's like putting your sensitive data into a secret code.
Yep.
So even if someone intercepts it, they can't read it without the key. The good news is a lot of cloud services and email providers offer encryption as part of their regular service. So you might already have it and just need to turn it on. The blog post points out how this can be a really good way to protect your confidential business information and communications.
Okay, so all of those sound like really actionable things that aren't nearly as scary as those big, complex security systems. Now, the post shifts gears a bit and talks about cybersecurity training, and they call this your first line of defense. Why is that?
That's a great point. The post emphasizes that human error is often the weakest point in any security system. It doesn't matter how good your software is, if you or your employees make mistakes that let attackers in. Things like clicking on a bad link in a phishing email or using a weak, easy-to-guess password can completely undo all your other security measures.
So it's not just about the tech, it's about being aware of the risks and knowing how to avoid them. And there are some really good resources out there for getting this training, including some free or low-cost options. What kind of resources are available for small businesses?
The post highlights a few places you can start that are totally free, like the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, and CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. They both have training materials on their websites. They cover things like creating strong passwords and recognizing phishing scams. And then there's Google's Cybersecurity Fundamentals course. They use real-world examples to teach you about different types of cyber threats. These are all great ways to build a foundation in cybersecurity awareness without spending any money. And then they mentioned something really cool, these interactive simulations, like the ones from a company called FishMe. These can be a really fun and effective way to practice spotting phishing emails in a safe environment.
Those simulations sound like a really good way to learn. And the post also talks about some other training options that are still pretty accessible for people who don't have a technical background.
Yeah, so if you want something a little more in-depth, they mention places like Cybery and the SANS Institute. They have more comprehensive courses, but they're still designed for people who are just starting out. And if you're on a budget, they talk about affordable online courses you can find on platforms like Udemy and Coursera. These are often taught by experts in the field and can give you a deeper understanding of cybersecurity. But the main takeaway from the blog post is that the best defense any small business can have is a well-informed team that knows how to spot potential threats and follows good cybersecurity practices.
That's really encouraging. It's great to know that there are so many options available to help you and your employees become more cyber aware. Now, towards the end, the post circles back to the idea that good cybersecurity doesn't have to cost a fortune. They highlight a bunch of cost effective strategies. Can you remind our listeners about some of the key budget-friendly things they can do?
Definitely. They reiterate that you can make huge improvements to your security without breaking the bank. They talk about using free or affordable security software, like those antivirus programs we discussed, and taking advantage of free password managers. They also say it's really important to use the built-in security features that are often included with your existing services, like multi-factor authentication and encryption. And of course, regularly backing up your data using affordable cloud storage is another big one.
So it really is possible for any small business to have good cybersecurity, no matter their size or budget. And then the post finishes up with a really helpful cybersecurity checklist. Can we go through those key steps that people can take right away to improve their security?
I like this checklist. It's a great summary of the actionable advice from the post. The first thing on the list is making sure all your devices are protected with antivirus software. Second, use strong, unique passwords for all your online accounts, and use a password manager to help you keep track of them all. Third, turn on multi-factor authentication for all your important accounts. Fourth, make sure you're regularly updating your software and security patches to fix any known weaknesses. Fifth, train yourself and your employees to recognize and avoid phishing attempts. Sixth, set up automatic data backups to protect your valuable information. And finally, use a VPN or virtual private network when you're accessing sensitive business data remotely, especially when you're on public Wi-Fi. This encrypts your internet connection and helps keep your data safe.
It's a really solid list of things you can do to make a big difference. And for more great digital resources to help you in your business and personal life, be sure to visit referenceranger.com.
Yeah, I think this deep dive has really shown that protecting your small business from cyber attacks doesn't have to be overwhelming or super expensive. The blog post we looked at lays out a clear plan with practical steps you can start using today.
So as you're listening to this, think about those action items we discussed. Which ones can you put into practice right away? Even taking a few small steps can really improve your security.
Remember, staying aware of the threats and taking steps to protect yourself, even small ones, can go a long way in keeping your data safe and ensuring your business can keep running smoothly.
And for tons of other resources to help you navigate the digital world and gain a real advantage, don't forget to check out referenceranger.com.
Thanks for listening to the Digital Advantage Podcast.